Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in today. We're so happy that you're here. Financial Issues is a stewardship ministry, and our goal is to help you be a good steward of everything that the Lord has given you. So we encourage you with wisdom from the scriptures to be a good manager. And we also help our partners to build and manage biblically responsible portfolios, because we screen out the companies that are funding a dark agenda, because we don't want to be yoked with that. And so we give you a way that you can practically honor God in the way that you invest. You can find out more information at financialissues.org. On today's show, we are going to answer some of the questions that you guys have been sending in. We have a place to do that on our website. Whether you're a partner or just a casual listener, you can send us questions and we can address those right here on the show. And later in the show, I've got Jason MacDowell, my friend and colleague, that is coming back to continue to share wisdom on estate planning. And of course, we'll get scripture encouragement from the scriptures from Psalm 90:12, and we're going to do that right now. Psalm 90:12 says, "So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." What do you think, Seth?
You know, Shana, this is a humbling verse. Numbering our days is a stewardship issue. And so I would encourage our audience, please think hard about this. We have no idea when our last day will be. God does, and we can take comfort in that. We do not. But this means a couple things. One, we need to make every second count. You know, you don't know how long you have, but every day you've been given is a gift from God, so make it worth it. And then number two, we need to work now to leave a good legacy for those in our care, because we don't know when the end is coming. Shana, I'm very excited to hear what you and Jason have to say in this next segment to talk about this exact thing.
I have a feeling it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's summertime, and many of us are planning vacations. Some of us may even have a countdown calendar going, so we know exactly how many days left until we leave. And when we go on a trip, no matter how long or short, we usually take great care to make sure all of our ducks are in a row and all of the things that need to be taken care of are taken care of. We gather everything that we need to bring with us. If we're going to the beach, we make sure that we have our swimsuits and towels and suntan lotion and all of those things. We take out the garbage before we leave so we don't come back to a stinking mess. We lock the doors to prevent thieves from coming in and stealing, and maybe even ask a neighbor to watch our house for us. We make sure that our pets are fed. We would hate to come back and see that our pet has died of starvation or has run away to look for food. We make sure that all of our bills are paid ahead of time so that we still have electricity and water when we get back. Well, one day we're going to go on a trip into eternity. We won't be able to bring anything with us, but there will be important things that are likely to be left behind, like our loved ones. We can't make a countdown calendar for our trip into eternity because we don't know exactly when that will be. But we do know that every day we wake up on the earth gets us one day closer to the time that we will leave for our eternal destination. Numbering our days can create a heart of wisdom because it forces us to shift our perspective from the temporary to the eternal. Knowing that our time is limited gives us a sense of urgency to live with purpose while we're here and to prioritize what matters, caring for people and the things placed under our control, and preparing our hearts for an eternal future. And then passing the material possessions to the places and people where God shows us He wants them. So let's answer some questions that we've been getting in, but I want everybody to stay tuned because Jason's going to join me in the next segment to pick back up on this topic.
Shana, that's such a good example with the vacation, by the way. Isn't it so funny how we put so much effort into preparing for our vacations, but not as much effort into preparing for the most important departure that we make, which is from this world?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that people can take a lesson from that for sure.
It is a lot more fun to plan for a vacation than for your death.
That's true. Well, good. Thank you for that, Shana. That was great. It was very encouraging. Sheila is up first here, Shana. She says, we're in the growth and income model, and are over in materials, under in commodities. We hold a small position in each of the ETFs in the commodity sector and hold 2 positions marked as metals and mining in the materials sector. We have MA58, MA51, approximately 1% each. Can I mark them as commodities or sell and buy ETFs? We'd like the income from MA58, which is held in our investment account, and MA51 is currently held in the Roth. And Sheila is 63 years old. What do you think?
Well, of course, you can do either. You could code MA51 as commodities. Now, because Sheila mentions here that she likes the income from MA58, then I would encourage her to continue to hold that, because the 2 in the commodity sector don't. So, we originally started with the 2 commodities in the material sector, and then we ended up breaking those out. We do tend to just generally like the ones in the commodity sector more. That's why there's the lower percentage in materials. But if you have an established position in certain materials companies, and there's still a hold on our list, then you can, certainly feel free to keep those.
Awesome. Next one we have here, Shana, is Mary Lou. Mary Lou says, I've been listening to your program for maybe a year now, on and off through CSN Radio. I'm 50 years old. I have no retirement investment yet, since I started late earning income on my own. My husband is retired. I have a CD account and a savings account. I have 2 teens. One's turning 18 next month. Had I known 7 years ago I would have invested in her college education. I could use some sound financial advice and direction on stewardship, and I'm a new partner also. Lord bless you. What do you have for Mary Lou?
Well, I pray the Lord blesses you too, Mary Lou, and we're so glad to have you as a partner and a listener. What I would say is that, reflecting on the past is good for learning from our past, but we should never get stuck there and hang on to those shouldas and couldas and all of those different things. So I would just encourage you and say there's no time like the present. So, we're glad that you are a partner and that you're starting to learn. And the next step is just to get started. So, start with the basics. Make sure that you have your emergency account, because you don't want to invest any money that you're going to need in the short term. And balance that with your current needs. If you're going to need to pay for some schooling for the kids, balance that out with saving for your future as well.
Awesome, Shana. Yeah, that's great. Welcome to Mary Lou. Lawrence is up next. Lawrence is 77. Lawrence, excuse me. He says, my wife and I have owned 905 shares of MA64. We're investing for income only. Since the new portfolio tracker has been instituted, asset allocation models have been changed. We own more than 2 times of this stock than the recommended percentage. The instructions on the list is to hold this stock. Do we sell down to buy other stock that won't pay as much? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think there are plenty of other stocks, maybe not necessarily in the materials sector, but in other sectors that are going to either offer similar or more income. So in this case, I would say the weighting in that one particular stock is going to be the deciding factor here. So if you are overweighted in that particular stock, then you do want to trim that position, and then you can look for another position. If your main goal is for income, then you can look for another position that offers a similar yield, maybe in another sector.
Awesome, Shana. Karen's up next here, 60 years old. She was saying, we started following the FISM strategy. We didn't understand tax advantage placement. All our technology stocks are in our joint investing account, and we have to pay the capital gains whenever we sell to rebalance. It seems like it'd be good to sell as much of the tech stocks we can out of the joint investing account and then repurchase in our Roth accounts to minimize future taxes. Is this a good idea?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily do that all at once. The first thing that you want to check and before you go selling things is the holding period that you've had, and look at the tax bracket you're in. So one bit of good news, maybe if this applies to you, is if you're in the 12% tax bracket and you can manage to sell enough to stay in that 12% tax bracket, then maybe you have a 0% capital gains rate. If not, be strategic about it. Spread your gains out over years. Yes, that could mean that they continue to go up in value, and and that you have a higher capital gains tax. But if you have a higher capital gains tax, it just means that you made more money. So it's not it's not all bad. You can also consider gifting appreciated stock and using cash to buy more tax efficient investments. And so let's just say that you give to your church, and they do accept gifts of appreciated stock. You want to, again, make sure that you've owned it for at least a year, but maybe instead of giving cash, maybe you're going to give them your stock, and then you're going to use the cash that you would have used to replenish your investment accounts. I don't know if you can get more money into your Roth or how that's going to work, but maybe with the Roth, you can just start positioning some of your aggressive investments there. Well, that was a lot. If I said that too fast, the good news is you can go back and replay it on the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or on our phone app as well. We hope that you're going to stick with us, because Jason MacDowell is up next, and we're going to dive headfirst into estate planning. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Stay tuned.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachOurschools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us here. Well, you just heard us talk about numbering our days and how that helps us to create a heart of wisdom, and being wise in financial matters means that we plan for certain things. And a couple of weeks ago, we discussed estate planning as a stewardship issue. If you missed that and you want to go back on podcast and find it, or in our archives, that was May the 27th. So that's a great follow-up to this video, or a precursor to this video, actually. So I said in the beginning of the estate planning that the beginning of estate planning starts with this question: Lord, what do you want me to do with your stuff when I don't need it anymore? So, it starts with the acknowledgement that everything belongs to the Lord, and once we come to acceptance on that fact, then it's good wisdom to ask the Lord what He wants us to do with it when we don't need it anymore. So I asked you to, or I encourage you to ask yourself whether all of your beneficiaries were people heirs or whether you had any kingdom heirs, and whether you needed to consider any adjustments. So we also discussed the differences between probate and non-probate assets and explored the cheap and easy ways of passing those assets using beneficiary designations. Today, I have my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell back, and we're going to go on to the next steps beyond naming beneficiaries. So not everything can be passed by naming beneficiaries. One example is your minor children. At some point, you probably have accumulated enough stuff to need some type of legal documents to make sure that everything happens the way that you intend for it to happen. So Jason, let's look at the two most common legal documents used for passing assets. Talk about a trust and a will.
Yeah, so in general, when speaking to people, whether they're clients or not, the questions always pop up about if a trust is wise to have regarding estate planning. And the answer is always going to be specific to what the individual wants for their estate plan, or better said, well, it depends. So we need details. Most suitable situations are everything to my surviving spouse and then to my kids and kingdom. I think that's a simple way to explain what your best wishes are. But before speaking on trust, let's actually start with the will, or define a will and a trust. So a will, or last will and testament, is a legal document that outlines how a person wishes their assets to be distributed after their death. It also specifies who should care for any minor children. It names a personal representative or an executor to manage the estate. Essentially, it's a formal declaration of a person's final wishes regarding their property and dependents. So additionally, a will dictates to probate court how assets are to be distributed, so it involves the probate process. The probate process is a key point we'll talk about here a little bit more. So with a trust is a legal arrangement where ownership of assets is transferred to a third party. That's known as a trustee, who manages and controls those assets for the benefit of another party, the beneficiary. The person who creates the trust and transfers the property is often called the grantor or the settlor. Trusts do cost more, though, so there is an additional cost to that, be put together by an attorney. And then trust is a non-probate entity, meaning it bypasses the probate process. So that's important in the estate plan.
Yep. So to reiterate, a will is that legal document. It tells the court how you want your stuff distributed. And I say yours tongue in cheek because we know it's all God's. And it names the person who is given the authority to do so, to sign, bills of sale or whatever has to happen to settle the estate. So I like to think of a trust as an entity that is created to manage and pass assets to future managers. So that a trust creates a fiduciary arrangement of trust, where the trustee holds and manages assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries according to the terms set by the grantor, as Jason just mentioned. So, Jason, talk a little bit, having a will, we said a trust bypasses the probate process, but a will actually creates a probate process. The probate process is where the legal document, the will, is taken to court and, the estate is settled. So talk about that for a minute.
Definitely. So the probate process, as you mentioned, differs for a will, as it dictates to the probate court what to do. So that legal document tells probate process with probate courts what to do. So there's a little bit an extra mechanic there. While trust language will dictate distributions as it is a non-probate entity. So the mechanic is of having to go through the probate process isn't there. It's just basically, hey, what's the trust actually say? So that begs the question, why have a will and a trust? Well, a will would cover any assets that may be probatable, like real estate, vehicles, if no beneficiary designation, land, or other property that could be involved. In some states, though, and this is important, a will is actually required even if individuals have a trust established to handle the distribution of assets. And many other important reasons to have. It would be wise to speak with a legal advisor or attorney on your individual needs specific to your state that you reside in, so your primary residential state.
Yeah. So property and vehicles can be put into a trust to be managed for the benefit of the beneficiaries. And having a pour over will at a minimum can address anything that was not put into the trust, because once you create a trust, then you have to put things into the trust. And the pour over will can address those things that were not actually retitled into the name of the trust, but goes to the beneficiaries in the same percentages. So a trust is narrow in that it only controls the things that are placed in it, while a will is broader and it addresses the entire estate minus what is placed in the trust or in those non-probate types of accounts that pass by beneficiary designation. So wills also typically address, like as you mentioned, the custody and care of minor children, and sometimes even instructions for funeral arrangements. So let's talk about the types of trust. Go ahead.
There's many types of trusts. We're just going to cover just a few here, at least for this segment. So let's start with the revocable trust, or also known as a living trust. So these trusts can be modified or terminated by the grantor during their lifetime. Modifications would be adding and removing assets placed in the trust. It's sort of a discretion thing you can add or remove. So this provides the most flexibility. The next one, of course, is the irrevocable trust. These trusts are generally finalized upon creation and cannot be altered or terminated by the grantor, also meaning assets cannot be removed. So the purpose may include reducing estate taxes and protecting assets from creditors. So there's a purpose to those two specifics there.
Yeah. Another use could also be that these types of trusts are great planning tools for blended families. So if you have a blended family, maybe it was early when your kids were little, or maybe it was after your kids were grown and you had a death of a spouse and you got remarried and you share 0 kids in common, but maybe you're blessed with a lot of them. So if you have a blended family and don't do estate planning, listen to this: the last spouse to die controls the distribution of the assets. Let that sink in. I'm going to say it again. The last spouse to die controls the ultimate distribution of assets, because what happens is that many people want to take care of their spouse, and that's an honorable thing, so they make their spouse the primary beneficiary. But then whenever the first spouse dies and the spouse inherits and gets the use of all of the assets, they rename beneficiaries. So unless there was some irrevocable planning that was done ahead of time, then the surviving spouse gets to dictate and change the entire estate plan if they want to. And if you've never had conversations, you may not be honoring the wishes of your deceased spouse because maybe you don't even know them. And in my opinion, and maybe this is a good time to insert it or not, but if you have a second marriage and you have minor kids, the kids really should come first. So the waters get muddier once the children are grown, but my advice is that you need to spend time with the Lord to get the answers for your own specific situation and have those very, very hard conversations with your spouse. Keep going. Jason.
All right. No, those are great points. Let's talk about the minor children and where the will comes in here. So there's another type of trust called a testamentary trust, and this is a trust established by a will. So essentially, hopefully you're paying a little bit less to get the will package at your attorney, and a will becomes effective upon the grantor's death. So a point to be made that with a testamentary trust or a trust created by a will are subject to the probate process still. But a good example is the need for creation due to minors. A will creates a trust for the benefit of minors where distribution of assets can be done at a later age specified in the legal language or the legal documents. So that's essentially a case of you have minor children and the trust will essentially be handled until maybe the minor children are no longer minors or they want to use it for a specific purpose. It's really up to your best wishes in that case. So pretty much hopefully any attorney that's giving any legal advice and you have minor children, this hopefully is included in that discussion of what their best thoughts are. So the last one we'll talk about here are charitable trusts. There's many of these. These trusts trusts are established to benefit charitable organizations, either through direct donations or through a trust that provides income to a charity, then passes on remaining assets to non-charitable beneficiaries. That also can be flip-flop with different types of charitable trusts, like a charitable remainder trust are another common type of charitable trust that's used in advanced estate and tax planning. So that's a little bit more advanced, and maybe someday we'll talk about it.
Yeah, so, I'm sure we will. I think most people think that they are almost done with the process once they just finally get the appointment with the attorney. But in most cases, though, that is just the beginning. So what we encourage you to do is to think about these things before you even meet with a legal professional. Have your game plan. Know generally where you want your stuff to go and be able to articulate it well. We call that having a blueprint. So being able to just describe in your own words, hey, I want my spouse to have use of the assets for as long as they're alive, and then beyond this is where we want things to go. So with that testamentary trust, sometimes it's a case where you want you know who you want to raise and care on a daily basis for your kids, for your minor kids, but maybe there's a different person that you want to have to be in charge of the money. So it helps you address all of those questions. So once you get to that attorney for the legal advice, make sure, because you're going there to make sure that what you want to happen actually happens, that you have the legal documents to make that done. But don't go in to get advice about what you want to happen. The stuff in question doesn't belong to the attorney, and it's not his stewardship decision. It really doesn't even belong to you or me. It belongs to God, and God should have the final say. If you have to leave us, we wish you a good day. Everyone else, stick around. We'll be back with more financial issues.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Everyone keeps talking about how important it is to invest.
Hey, have you decided where to put your money yet?
But every time I try to understand it, I just get more and more confused.
I get it. Stocks are scary. The market's unpredictable.
Investing isn't something you do casually. It's a calculated process that requires diligence, strategy,
every single day to
refinement.
I've had enough of the noise.
If you want some help with investing, you should check out Financial Issues.
I never thought I'd say this, but I started investing today. It wasn't as scary as I expected. Since getting connected to Financial Issues, I've had no more worries.
We give you recommendations about how to build a biblically responsible portfolio if you're doing it on your own.
They guide you through investing, and what's awesome is the investments they recommend are all biblically responsible, which means you don't have to worry about what your money is funding. Go to financialissues.org to become a partner today.
One of the emphases of preborn has been ultrasound in two ways. An ultrasound machine if a pregnancy clinic doesn't have one, and then an ultrasound session, which we underwrite hundreds of thousands of those. We've seen over and over again the dramatic results that when a woman encounters her baby for the first time and hears that heartbeat, she realizes the magnitude of what's happening here, that there is somebody else. That's her baby. So this is why preborn pushes out ultrasound as much as we possibly can. Preborn has seen over 200,000 babies saved, over 59,000 people come to Christ, populating earth and eternity, life for this life and life forever. Save the baby's life, but save the mother's life so that she can lead that baby to Christ. If we're bringing people into this world and the mother doesn't receive Christ and the child is born and the child lives its life and doesn't receive Christ, this is not a good end. And so we have to have the gospel as part and parcel and really the heartbeat of what preborn is.
Appreciate you all joining us today. Hope you enjoyed that conversation there. Great stuff. I'll have some follow-up things to say about that in just a moment here. Folks, I do want to remind you, we have some great estate planning videos on the website. You can check that out. If you're a partner, you have access to all that stuff, financialissues.org. If you go to the Partner Hub page, so it's that great new system that we have there that gives you easy access to everything. Just scroll down a little bit, and there's some instructional videos as a library there. You can check that out. You can actually search it by category. So if you type in estate planning, several videos will pop up there for you. I'm sure they'll be helpful for you. All right, folks, we got our final numbers from the preborn campaign. I'm real excited for this. I didn't tell Sam what it is because I actually wanted him to guess. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to guess, Sam. Our final numbers. $2. No, it was much more than $2, thankfully.
Okay, $3.
Over, even more than that. $241,000 and change raised by the Financial Issues family. Over $241,000.
That's awesome.
That was fantastic. You all just did a tremendous job. So many babies saved, so many ultrasound machines underwritten. We had Dan Steiner on the program. I believe it was a Thursday of last week. We had him on the program.
Yep, that's right.
He was just thrilled about that. So we're so thankful for all of you helping us to, not only help Preborn, what the work that they're doing, but to bless us as well. That fostering partnership with Preborn is just so important. It's such a benefit to us as a ministry, how much they love us. The reason that they love us so much in part is because of the generosity of our listeners. And so you guys did that. Just excellent job. It was a wildly successful campaign, and we're praising God for it. Back to what Shana was talking about with Jason in that last segment there. I did just want to share with you all, I think what they said was just fantastic. And if you're one of those people who, maybe you're a higher net worth person, or maybe you're not, but you don't have a will written yet, yesterday is when you should do it. I mean, now is the time to do that stuff. You never know the day or the hour that the Lord is going to bring you home, especially if you have people who are depending upon you for sure. It's such a gift to those around you to be able to take care of that stuff now. If you think about it, if something were to happen to you, and I'm not meaning to be morbid about this, but if something were to happen to you and you pass away and you don't have those things figured out, and it's so much more complicated to do that, just think how much harder that is on your survivors, on those people who are already mourning your loss, now having to figure this stuff out as well. It really is a gift of love to them to be able to have these things specifically set out, written out. One thing Shana shared with me as well, which is hugely important, especially if you've got minor children and you have someone who you've designated to be the one to care for them if something were to happen to you and your spouse, make sure they know where the will is. Make sure to tell them where it is. Make sure to give them access to it. It's a really good practical things for you to think about with this, folks, that I think sometimes we don't often think about these things. But when we're talking about those types of things, can be a wonderful legacy thing for you to do. And also, just once again, something that is a gift of love to the people who you leave behind. So I do hope you consider doing that. All right, Sam, let's move to something slightly less fun here, especially for me, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Apparently, Major League Baseball is being really silly still. So, Sam, I'm a baseball fan, which is not very much fun. Baseball season's in full swing. I was a catcher in high school. I love baseball. I love playing it, love watching it. But I got to tell you, worse than the steroid scandal of the early 2000s, worse than the gambling scandals throughout the years, the Black Sox scandal of 1919 and other things like that, is Major League Baseball's incessant commitment to the LGBTQ agenda in the last 5 years.
Even when all the companies are abandoning it seems that MLB is not getting the memo, right?
They're not getting the memo.
It's not Sam, even entertaining like the steroid scandal. At least then they could hit the ball really far.
We are not promoting steroids, folks, but watching those home run hitters was good baseball. This has nothing to do with the quality of the game. Sam, 29 out of 30 Major League Baseball teams are sticking with Pride Month.
Insanity,
crazy
right?
Stuff. Yeah.
They really need to get the memo. You're right. 29 out of 30. That's according to the Daily Wire. Not only are they sticking with it, like promoting it in some way, they are all having official LGBT Pride Nights sometime this month to celebrate so-called Pride Month. The only exception to this, the 1 out of the 30, is the Texas Rangers, which historically has never celebrated Pride Month at all. Last year, in fact, they released a statement saying, quote, "Our longstanding commitment remains the same to make everyone feel welcome and included in Rangers baseball, in our ballpark, at every game, and in all we do for both our fans and our employees alike."
Sam, I appreciate you bringing that up. First of all, God bless bless the Texas Rangers, man. That's awesome. That is great stuff. I don't know how good they're playing right now, but that doesn't really matter. I think that's fantastic that they're sticking to what they do. This is what we're at with our investment models. What we're asking companies to do is just be about the business that you're supposed to do. The Texas Rangers are a baseball team. Their job is to play baseball. That's a kid's game. Their job is to play a game, make ridiculous amounts of money doing it, and provide entertainment. That's what they do. It's not to get into liberal politics and all that sort of things. You know, Sam, it really has become fascinating. Sports has become a sphere to make a political statement, and it's really frustrating. It's very,
Which is
very
so sad because the whole point of sports is to get your mind off of those things.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be a way to
That's exactly
escape from all the chaos and troubles of life and just relax for an hour or two and be entertained.
We don't talk about sports often on this show. Number one, because it's not a sports show. Number two, because sports is, in the final analysis, absolutely meaningless. Other than being able to use it as an avenue to glorify God, it's meaningless. It's entertainment. It's fun. Like you said, Sam, this is where you go to get away from the politics. You enjoy a sports game. You throw a baseball with your son. You throw a football with your son. It's awesome. It's innocent. It's wonderful. But when politics infiltrates it, especially leftward-leaning politics, as we've seen in the last generation, it poisons it, and it makes it unwatchable. It makes it not enjoyable. I said this as a joke on Friday. You expect this kind of nonsense in soccer, and I apologize to the soccer fans in advance out there, but soccer, you could see that stuff.
You said it, but I was thinking it too.
Exactly. Or, you know, the NBA and the NFL, those two sports organizations are just, you know, unfathomably leftward leaning in their politics. You expect it from the Olympics, which is a total joke, complete and utter joke. It's the equivalent of the World Economic Forum or the UN, the United Nations. Sports. That's what they are, the United Nations of sports. It's absolutely abominable. So you would expect it there. It's smoke and mirrors, but not from baseball. Baseball's Americana. Baseball is core to our country. You know, it's tradition. There's order to the game as well. And so when you have this influx here, it really just makes it unwatchable. I don't think it's a good look at all, by the way. So I do hope that maybe baseball is just a little bit behind everyone else, Sam. I mean, we've looked at how, you know, so many companies are ditching their pride agenda and doing all that stuff. Baseball, obviously, as you said, has not got the memo, but hopefully it just means they're just a couple steps behind, and maybe next year we'll see a little bit of a move backwards from
I just really hope they pick up on what the Rangers is doing. Same with companies too. They would do well to look at what the Rangers said because they're right. Their job, they say, is to make everyone feel welcome. So they understand the only way to do that is to be neutral, is to do what you're supposed to do, which, as you said, is play baseball. Same thing. If you're a company and you make widgets, you make those widgets. That's the only way you're truly going to make everyone happy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well said, Sam. It's good stuff. So we'll keep moving here then, folks. We're hoping and praying and using our investor dollars as well against these types of things. Well, let's move now to the markets here and see what's going on this week in the economy before we take a break in this segment. So on Friday, we had a strong jobs report. Shana talked about that in her In the Know segment on Friday morning. Resulted in some excitement for Wall Street. The major indices rose to close the week. By midday, indices were all hanging near 1%. Late afternoon, they were really the same. The S&P 500 actually eclipsed the 6,000 point threshold just prior to the week's final trading hour. And they finished great. All three indices up above the 1% mark. Dow Jones was just above 1%, as was the S&P. The NASDAQ was up 1 1/5 of percentage points. So for the week ending June 6th, it was a really good one for the markets. The Dow Jones was up 1.2%, the NASDAQ was up 2.2%, and the S&P up 1.5%. Pre-markets this morning were kind of mixed, and as they've opened here, everything is still kind of mixed. There's a reason for that. The Dow Jones is down about 1/7 of a percentage point. The NASDAQ is mirroring it in the positive, almost 1/5. The S&P 500 is right at the flat line. There's a big news headline that we're waiting to hear from today. China and the U.S. are going to be holding trade talks today in London. So we're kind of waiting to hear what's going to happen with that, folks. But
no updates as of yet.
Yep. So I'm very sure, though, Sam, that whatever comes of this is probably going to have an impact on the markets, and we'll be certain to touch on it tomorrow as we.
As a side note, I do see that Trump also had a phone call with the head of South Korea, and they say they're going to work very quickly to get some sort of trade deal finished.
Yeah, good stuff. So we're seeing some things happening there, folks. We'll keep you updated on that for sure. If you missed Friday's show, let's give you just a review of what's happening this week. So Shana said, this is inflation week. So the focus shifts to the CPI reporting that comes out on Wednesday. Core CPI expected to cool slightly, but any upside surprise could further delay rate cut expectations. The Fed, this is kind of the Fed's quiet period. The Fed actually meets next week, so there's not going to be any speeches, no public comments, no descending down Mount Federal Reserve from our Lord Father Jerome Powell. So take that for what it's worth. You might like that, you might not like that, but no Fed stuff this week. So this is really inflation week as we're seeing here. So that's what we're looking like. Let's take a quick chat rundown here. Good to see so many of you. I see Ethan. Good to see you, brother. Ethan is from Alabama. Hello to Ethan. George from North Carolina. Lisa in Texas. Nelson. Good to see you, brother. Nelson from Louisiana. Let's see. We already mentioned George. You're there. Dave and Darlene from Virginia. Andy, welcome back. Andy missed the show for a couple days. Good to have you back, brother, from Kansas. Dave and Darlene, good to see you. Walter in Texas. Good to see you as well. If I missed anyone, make sure to say hello. We'll get you in the fourth segment. We got more financial issues coming up right after this break. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
From the time Crossroads began back in 1998, our sole focus was on reaching children in public schools in the United States. And then in 2017, we decided to translate our curriculum into Spanish, primarily so that we could serve Spanish-speaking churches and students in the U.S. And as I was connecting with a pastor in Chicago and telling him about the materials that Crossroads had in Spanish and about what Kids Club was all about, he said, "Hey, I have a friend in Mexico who I think would really benefit from these materials and your approach to working with children." And so I began the conversation with Rolando Gonzalez. In March of 2018, I traveled for the first time to Guadalajara and met with Rolando, and right away we just connected on a heart. And so we sent a team in August of 2018 to train leaders here in Mexico, and the first international kids clubs were born.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey folks, by the way, we are streaming on Twitter, or X if you know it as that. So make sure you check us out over there as well. If you need a place to watch the show, you can do it for free there.
Be sure to follow us too.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Follow us over there. It's great stuff.
Don't be stingy with your follows.
That's right. That's right. Deal them out graciously. Absolutely. Great stuff. All right, Sam, let's get to our ag report today. We've got Craig Haugaard giving us what we need to know for our farmers and ranchers. We appreciate all of you so very much. Here's our ag report, then we'll get back to more.
The This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 9th. The corn market drifted on Friday, but managed a higher close. The South American harvest and lack of weather threats here in the U.S. really kind of put a lid on any gains, though, on Friday. The closing bell, July corn was 3 cents higher at $4.42 and a half. Soybeans benefited from a mid-session rumor of a potential amendment to the renewable fuel standard, which would treat used cooking oil less favorably than it would soybean oil. Now, the Friday's CFTC's Commitment of Traders report showed fund managers have been reducing their long position in soybean futures. And it's certainly worth noting that U.S. trade officials are going to meet with representatives from China today in London. I suspect that what comes out of that meeting is going to determine which direction soybean prices head in the near term. On Friday, July beans were 5.5 cents higher at $10.57 and a quarter. Wheat found support as rainfall in the southern plains continue to impede hard red winter wheat harvest. Oklahoma is only 4% harvested compared to 21% last year at this time. We also saw support from an escalated tension between Russia and Ukraine as attacks have been ramped up and peace talks have been pretty unfruitful. Minneapolis July wheat was a dime higher at $6.35 and a quarter. Kansas City rose by 6 3/4 cents to settle at $5.49 and a quarter. With Chicago 9 1/4 cents higher at $5.54 3/4. Cotton futures just continue to chop sideways. July futures ended the day 26 points higher at 65.26. Livestock futures were all stronger to end the week. August live cattle were $2.05 higher at $218.87 per hundredweight. August feeders rose by $1 to settle at $310.15 per hundred. And with July lean hog futures $2.30 higher at $107.10 per hundredweight. After 3 days of losses, Class 3 milk futures were able to post a positive close on Friday. When the closing bell sounded, July futures were up 20 points at $18.84. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
There he is, folks. Craig Haugaard. Always appreciate the insight that he brings for us. We'll have him live on the show probably next week at some point. I think we'll get Craig back. So anytime you guys have questions for Craig, by the way, just send me an email with them, or you can put them in the chat also, and I'll compile them for the next time that
is he away exploring Antarctica, the mountains of Peru?
He just got back. He sent us a text. He was running a 50K or something like that.
Figured it was something like that.
He's crazy, and he said that his wife beat him. But to be fair, he has had a couple surgeries and he's already back at it. Craig's a madman, but he's
a monster.
Yeah, he is awesome. So we're grateful to have him. All right, Sam, let's get back to some of what's going on here in the culture once again. Sam, you actually were our resident reporter here looking into Target because we had been hearing whiffs that maybe Target has ditched its entire Pride selection.
What can I say? I'm an investigative journalist.
Awesome.
I need my hat and my cigarette or whatever they have nowadays. But yes, walking into Target, see what's up, because I was reading these reports. According to Fox Business, Target has replaced their gay pride products with American Pride for June, and I went in to check it out, and it is true. You could not find hide nor hair of really anything rainbow, but you could find plenty, and I mean plenty, of red, white, and blue. So nature is healing, Seth, because this is the way it used to be. Around June and July, you wouldn't find any rainbow stuff. No, you would see stuff to get ready for the 4th of July, and that does seem to be the case. As you can imagine, conservatives are quite excited about this. One shopper on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, said walking into Target today, and instead of giant pride displays as in the past, they have a USA section. This is winning. On the other hand, as you can imagine, left-wingers are, let's say, less enthusiastic. One said, I'm at Target. There is no pride section at my Target. You would think they would learn something. Not even a section, not even one pride shirt. That's embarrassing, Target. Do better.
Yeah, you gotta love the sound of freedom, right, Sam? No, that's awesome. Yeah, you're exactly right. We were talking about this before the show started today. And by the way, folks, if you're seeing, we've got some B-roll images up there. That's obviously not current. Those were from several years ago. Back
2023, I think.
Yeah, I believe it was 2023 when Target was in a lot of hot water over having tuck-friendly swimsuits and gay pride swimsuits for children as young as 5. It was absolutely insane. But we are seeing a real change here, at least an outward change. Now, Sam, of course, the question I always come back to with this, I have to wonder, is this true heart change? And I use the word heart change tongue-in-cheek because obviously it's not like Target has a heart that can be repented. But what I'm talking about is there actual values change among the top brass at Target, or are they just following what's popular based on whoever's in the Oval Office and whatever's popular at the time? Seems to me to be the second one. But I guess time will tell.
At least with Target, but yeah, because they were one of the original true believers. The second you had a Bergefell come down and there was a whole question of the bathrooms, Target was the one that said, all right, we're going to allow trans people into the bathrooms, as opposed to these other companies that have done some of these things later. That seems to be more of, just a cultural pressure thing, not a true belief of the company.
Exactly. And you know what? In the final analysis, though, I think results matter more. I don't think it really matters unless, if we're talking about the longevity of a movement, then you can make an argument, okay, maybe it does matter if it's a real heart change or if it's just, whatever the cultural tides are kind of speaking to. But I think nonetheless, exactly right, Sam. Like, results matter. Results really do matter. And that leads us to the question, and I even see some of you in the chat talking about this right now. Do you shop at Target? Do you stick to your guns, as so many of us did, from when they made that move back in 2016 up until, last year? Or do you reward a company when it does something right? I think it's an interesting question. Sam, what do you think?
Well, the left has been certainly pushing back. They've been boycotting. The left wing has been boycotting Target, saying we want you to be selling this pride stuff. I read that tweet right there, or X or whatever you call it. But someone said something and they were mad that they don't have the pride shirts. So I think you do need to reward them. When a company's doing something that you've been pressing them to do for years, they're not going to respond positively for a long time if you don't show them that you appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Sam. I would say it would certainly be a conscience issue. Absolutely. If your conscience is like, you know what, I got to stick to my guns, I don't think that's morally wrong at all. But Sam, I agree with you.
This is more of a strategic view. So of course, don't violate your conscience.
It's strategic. Common sense as well seems to tell me that if a company changes what they did, I think it only makes sense to reward them for that, especially now, not to go out of your way, but if you need something there, I don't see any problem with that at all.
Especially if you were someone who used to shop at Target regularly and you enjoyed it, and you've been boycotting it for this time being. I don't know. If you actually enjoy the company, now might be the time to go back. Just putting that out there is my opinion.
Something to think about for sure, definitely. I know there, some of you in the chat saying, never shop there again.
Totally respect that.
Makes sense. Some of you say that you might go back there again. Maybe you have gone back there again. Regardless, I think it's great news. I think it's really good news. So good to see that for sure. Sam, speaking of that, we do have some Pride Month data as we're kind of talking about all this stuff here. What can you tell us about kind of where we're at so far?
So I mentioned a little bit of this data last week, but nearly 40% of companies say they plan to reduce Pride-related engagement in 2025. That was the lead number I mentioned, but I didn't mention this part, and this is perhaps more interesting. Notably, 0% of companies, so no companies at all, plan to increase their engagement. So almost half of companies are getting rid of in some way, perhaps all of it or maybe just a little bit of their engagement, but none of them, even the most liberal companies, are increasing their engagement. About 61% of them say this is largely because of the Trump administration moves to crack down on DEI, but I also have to imagine a lot of this also has to do with the cultural pushback that's been coming against companies like Bud Light and yes, Target. There's been some lawsuits involved there that is encouraging these companies to pull back somewhat. Meanwhile, 65% of companies say they are actively preparing for backlash in some way, although I'm not sure if that means backlash from conservatives, if they're still engaging in this Pride Month stuff in some way, or is this backlash from the left because they're pulling back? That I'm not sure of.
Yeah. Sam, it kind of gets to the question we were just asking about, are we seeing a real actual change here, or is it just a cultural change that will then change back if we get a change in administration back to a more liberal side? Here's my concern with this. My concern is that this stuff is not going to go away, even though it has been suppressed. That it's not going to go away totally, because it seems like it might be remaining at that grassroots level. It might still be with internal programs at companies. Sam knows this because he's helped me with it. I've been trying to get rid of, and now succeed by God's grace, have gotten rid of a bamboo forest in my backyard. But to really get rid of it, you have to get down to the roots and actually yank the roots up. And it is expensive. There's a longer way to do it where you can kind of mow over it over years, and that eventually kills it. But the way to really do it efficiently is you cut the bamboo down, and then you pull it up by the roots. And my concern is that we're not seeing a pulling up by the roots here.
And that's right. And according to that same study, it does say that these companies are often keeping internal stuff still going on.
Exactly.
So that's a good point, Seth.
Exactly. So, the roots are still there. Who knows? God forbid if there's a changing of the guard back to a liberal administration in 2028. Don't be surprised if you see a return to this stuff. Again, God forbid it. And you know what? I do hope and pray that the progress we've made can be permanent progress where we never have to go back to what it was in 2023 and 2024. But we'll have to see, folks. Good news is the Lord's on the throne, as he has been and as he will be for all eternity. And we can say thank you, Jesus, for that one. Folks, I do hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day today. God willing, we'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with it. God bless you all. See you next time.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.